going to discuss about ethics, a set of rules of human behavior which has been influenced by the standards set by the society or by himself in relation to his society is called ethics. As we all know, ethics are the moral principles that guide an individual's behavior and decision making. They help people distinguish between right and wrong and determine what is appropriate in a given situations. Adhering to ethical standards ensures that individuals act in a responsible and honest manner, taking into consideration the welfare of others and the broader impact of their actions. Examples are being truthful and honest in all your dealings. This demonstrates integrity, which is highly valued in personal and professional settings. Next is the standards of etiquette, are non-moral standards by which we judge manners as good or bad. Etiquette, also known as manners, refers to the code of behavior that governs the social interactions and conduct of individuals in various situations. It is a set of rules that help people navigate social interactions with grace, respect, and understanding. Practicing good etiquette contributes to the overall harmony of society. An example of etiquette includes saying please and thank you when you ask for or receive something. This shows appreciation and respect for the other person's actions or assistance. Next is the standards of law, are non-moral standards by which we judge an actions to be legally right or wrong. Okay, the standards of law, also known as the legal standards, refers to the rules and regulations that govern the conduct of individuals and organizations within a society. These standards are codified in the form of laws and are enforced by the legal system. By adhering to these standards, people are expected to act in accordance with the principles of justice, fairness, and equality under the law. Examples of legal standards include obeying the speed limit while driving, following traffic signals, and refraining from using a mobile phone while operating a vehicle. These laws are designed to promote safety on the roads and ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to travel without the risk of harm or danger. Another example is paying taxes on time and in the correct amount, which is necessary for the functioning of essential public services and the maintenance of a well-ordered society. Next is the standards of language, are non-moral standards by which we judge what is grammatically right or wrong. Okay, standards of language, also known as linguistic standards. It refers to the rules and conventions that govern the use of a particular language. These standards encompasses various aspects including grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, and formality. By adhering to these standards, people can communicate effectively and accurately, ensuring mutual understanding and respect in their interactions. And examples of standards of language include using correct grammar and punctuation in written and spoken communication. This helps to convey message clearly and accurately, reducing the risk of misunderstanding. Another example is adapting the formality of your language to suit the context and the relationship between the people involved. Next is the standards of aesthetics. Standards of aesthetics are non-moral standards by which we judge good and bad art. Standards of aesthetics refers to the principles and criteria used to judge the beauty and artistic merit of various objects, creations, and environments. These standards are often influenced by cultural, historical, and personal factors. By understanding and applying these standards, individuals can develop a deeper appreciation for the world around them and the various forms of beauty that exist. Example, an example of aesthetic standards is the use of color, compositions, and lighting in a visual artwork. These elements can evoke different emotions, create sense of harmony or discord, and guide the viewer's attentions. A painting that effectively combines these elements to convey a particular mood or message is likely to be considered successful from an aesthetic standpoint. Next is the standards of athletics. Standards of athletics are non-moral standards by which we judge how well a game is being played. Standards of athletics, also known as sports. Standards refer to the rules, regulations, and criteria used to evaluate the performance of athletes in various sports. These standards ensure fair competitions and provide a basis for measuring and comparing the abilities of athletes within a given sport or discipline. Upholding these standards helps to maintain the integrity of sports and the outcomes of athletic events. Example, specific examples of the standards of athletics is include the use of specific equipment or attire in a given sport, such as a swimsuit in competitive swimming or specialized footwear for track and field events. This ensures that all athletes are subject to the same conditions and have an equal opportunity to succeed. Ethics come from the Greek word ethos, which means customs, usage, or character. Next is the meta-ethics, deals with the natures of moral judgment, prescribes moral principles or maxims for us to follow if we are to live moral lives. Metaethics is a branch of ethics that examines the nature, scope, and meaning of ethical principles and theories. It seeks to understand the foundations of ethics, the assumptions, concepts, and methods that underpin moral reasoning and judgment. Metaethics does not focus on determining specific ethical guidelines or evaluating particular moral theories, but rather explores the language, logic, and metaphysical nature of ethics as a discipline. Examples of questions that fall under the domain of metaethics include what is the meaning of ethical terms such as good, right, and obligations? What is the nature of moral value and how do we determine what is morally valuable? Through the study of metaethics, philosophers and researchers aim to develop a deeper understanding of the nature of ethics, the concepts that are central to ethical discourse, and the various perspectives on ethical issues that inform and shape our moral beliefs and actions. Next is the normative ethics. It's concerned with the content of moral judgment and the criteria for what is right or wrong. Attempts to answer our questions regarding the practical ends of human actions. Normative ethics is the branch of philosophy that explores the questions of what people ought to do and what principles should guide their actions and choices. It examines the moral standards and norms that should govern human behavior, as well as the various ethical theories that offer principles for determining right and wrong conduct. Normative ethics is concerned with developing and evaluating specific ethical frameworks, such as utilitarianism, which propose different answers to the fundamental questions, how should we live? Examples of questions addressed within a normative ethics include, it is morally right to lie to protect someone from harm. What are the ethical implications of breaking a promise to prevent a greater harm? How should we balance competing ethical considerations such as individual rights and the common good? By engaging in normative ethical inquiry, philosophers, ethicists, and individuals seek to develop a deeper understanding of the principles and values that should guide human behavior and to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of competing ethical theories in providing practical guidance for moral decision making. Next is the applied ethics. Applied ethics involves examining specific controversial issues such as abortions, infanticide, animal rights, environmental concerns, and homosexuality. Applied ethics is a branch of ethics that focuses on the practical applications of ethical principles to specific issues, dilemmas, and situations. It involves the analysis of moral problems and the development of ethical solutions and recommendations in various fields, such as businesses, medicine, law, technology, and the environment. Applied ethics works to identify, evaluate, and address the ethical implications and challenges associated with the complex moral issues that arise in these areas. Examples of applied ethics include it is ethically justified to use genetic engineering to create designer babies with specific traits or to eliminate genetic disease. It is morally acceptable for pharmaceutical companies to charge high prices for life-saving medications in order to recoup research and development costs and generate profits. By examining these and other ethical issues through the lens of applied ethics, scholars, policymakers, and the general public can develop a more nuanced understanding of ethical challenges inherent in contemporary society and work to create just responsible and sustainable solutions to this problem. Next is the human act. A human act is a conscious, voluntary, and free act. It does not force nor coerce a person to perform an act. Human act, also known as an act of a person, is an action that is deliberately chosen by an individual. It is voluntary decision made with awareness and intentions. Human acts are distinguished from acts that are not the results of conscious choice, such as reflex actions or instinctual behaviors. Each human act can be evaluated in terms of its moral quality based on the intentions of the agent, the circumstances in which the act is performed, and the end or outcome that the agent seeks to achieve. Examples of human acts include choosing to help a friend in need, deciding to tell the truth even when it is difficult, electing to study and work hard to achieve a personal goal, selecting to donate money to charitable organizations, opting to spend quality time with family rather than pursuing other activities. Each of these actions is the result of a conscious decisions made by an individual reflecting their values, priorities, and personal goals. Next is the freedom. Freedom is the foundation of morality and depends on truth and makes you responsible for your actions. Freedom is the ability to act, choose, and live without unnecessary constraints or limitations. It is the absence of coercions or oppressions, allowing individuals to pursue their goals, interests, and well-being in a manner consistent with their values and personal convictions. Freedom can be understood in various dimensions, including political, social, and personal freedom. Political freedom refers to the ability to participate in decision-making process that affect one's life and society, while social freedom encompasses the opportunity to express one's ideas, beliefs, and identity without fear of retributions or censorship. Personal freedom involves the capacity to make autonomous choices and control one's own life, free from unwanted interference. Examples of freedom include the right to vote in an elections and the ability to choose one's representatives, the freedom to express dissenting opinions and engage in peaceful protests, the opportunity to select one's occupation, education, and place of residence, regardless of risk, religions, or gender. The ability to make decisions about one's own body and reproductive choices. Embracing freedom in its various forms enables individuals to lead fulfilling and authentic lives, promoting human dignity, equality, and social progress. Lastly, the hedonistic lifestyles. We experience hedonistic lifestyle when we begin to look at the things as moral in their capacity to provide pleasures and prevent pain. A hedonistic lifestyle is a way of life that prioritizes the pursuit of pleasures and the avoidance of pain as the ultimate goals. This philosophy, known as hedonism, suggests that pleasure is the highest good and should be the primary aim of human existence. Hedonists often focus on maximizing their immediate satisfactions and minimizing their long-term discomfort, though interpretations of hedonism can vary widely. Some may adopt a hedonistic approach to specific aspects of life, such as food, leisure, or relationships, while others may embrace a more comprehensive hedonistic worldview. Examples of a hedonistic lifestyle include frequenting parties and social gatherings to enjoy the thrill of the moment, indulging in rich and decadent foods to savor their flavors and textures, pursuing intimate relationships and romantic encounters for the excitement and emotional rewards, traveling the world to experience diverse cultures, landscapes, and adventures, engaging in activities that provide adrenaline rush such as skydiving, bungee jumping, or racing cars. Hedonistic lifestyle can bring short-term happiness and satisfactions. It may also lead to potential rest and negative consequences if pursued without considerations for the well-being of oneself and others, or if it comes at the expense of long-term goals and values.
Etiquette is a proper behavior that makes us show respect and courtesy to others. Etiquette involves adhering to social norms that promote respect and consideration for others. So let's say, for example, proper way of dressing. Law is an ordinance for the common goods of people promulgated by the legitimate authority. So law is a rule or guidelines that regulate the behavior of individuals and organization within a society. Moral power, the ability to influence others and inspire ethical behavior through integrity, principle, and exemplary conduct. Example of moral power is gender equality. Moral standards, the decisions of authoritarian bodies, nor solely appealing to consensus or tradition. So, moral standards, principles, and values that guide individuals' judgment and action regarding what is right and wrong. Universal validity apply to all who are in the same situation, and it exemplifies the golden rule: do not do unto others what you would not have them to do unto you. So according to Aristotle, moral virtue is attained by means of habit, a character that valued as being good, and it embodying principles such as honesty, integrity, compassion, and justice. Aristotle, Aristotle said, virtue or having a virtue means doing the right thing at the right time, in the right way, in the right amount, toward the right people. The one who developed the virtue ethics theory is Aristotle, the Greek philosopher. The one who developed the virtue ethics theory is Aristotle, the Greek philosopher. Virtue ethics, the ancient assumption that humans have a fixed nature, is an approach to ethics that emphasizes the development of good character traits, values, and it cultivating virtues like honesty, courage, and also compassion that lead to a morally good life. Virtue ethics theory, that the determination of what makes a person or character good rather than what makes an action good, guiding individuals to act according with moral excellence. So moral, it refers to principle or beliefs concerning right and wrong. Aristotle virtue ethics recognizes that eudaimonia or happiness is the ultimate purpose of a person because it is the fulfillment of our innate human potential and the activity of living well in accordance with virtue. Natural law ethics developed by St. Thomas Aquinas. It is an inherent moral code derived from human reasons and reflecting universal principle that guides ethical behavior. The three determinants of moral action. First, the object or the end of an action or finis operas, which means the intended outcome or goal that derives the performance of an action. Number two, the intention of the agent or finis operantis, no? Which means the motive or purpose behind the action. Number three, the circumstances or circumstante, which means the situational factors surrounding an action, which can affect the moral evaluation of the act but do not determine its intrinsic morality. And the last one is natural rights are in are inalienable rights. It is independent rights of government authority. It is the rights that are inherent to human beings and it is believed to be derived from universal.
Good day, everyone. I am J. for de la Linya Rabong to be continued. Theological ethical theory, this theory also known as consequentialism, suggests that the morality of an action is determined by its outcomes or consequences, that rightness or wrongness of an action depends on how much good it procedures. For example, imagine a doctor who has five patients in need an organ transplant and one healthy patient who could provide those organs if sacrificed. And then a theological approach might justify sacrificing the healthy patients to save the five, because the consequences saving the five lives is considered better than the alternative. When the deontological ethical theory, this theory most associated with Immanuel Kant, argues that the morality of an action is based on whether it adheres to a rule or duty, regardless of consequences. Then actions are right or wrong in themselves, and we have a duty to perform the right actions. Example, suppose a person finds a wallet full of cash, and a deontologist would argue that the person has a duty to return the wallet to its rightful owner because it is a right thing to do, regardless of any personal benefit is inconvenience involved. So, Kantian deontological theory, this Immanuel Kant versions of deontological ethics emphasize that actions are morally right if they are done out of duty and according to a universal moral law. This law is based on categorical imperative, which means acting is such a way that your actions could be a universal law. Examples: imagine you are considering telling a lie to get out of trouble. Kantian ethics would ask you to consider if lying could be a universal law, since a world where everyone lies would lead to chaos and mistrust. Lying would be considered morally wrong, and you have a duty to tell the truth. And these explanations and examples illustrate the key difference between the theories. Theological ethics focuses on the results of an actions, while deontological ethics, especially Kantian, focuses on the inherent morality and duties associated with action. Now let's move on acting from duty. Okay, acting according to Kantian ethics, acting from duty means performing an action because it is a morally right and not for any other motive or personal gain, and actions considered to be done with a good will if it's done for the right reason, purely out of respect for moral law. So let's move on to the situational example. A person returns a lost wallet, what I've mentioned earlier, to its owner solely because they believe it is their moral duty to do so, regardless of any reward. So let's move on to hypothetical imperatives. So hypothetical imperatives are conditional commands that apply only if one desires a particular outcome. They instruct us on what to do to achieve specific goals or ends. And situational examples: if you have want to pass the exam, you should study very hard. So that's it. In categorical imperatives, this is are unconditional commands that we must follow regardless of our desires or goals. They represent moral laws derived from reason that apply universally and necessitate actions. Okay, for example, always tell the truth regardless of any consequences or personal desires. So now let's move on principles of categorical imperative. An action is considered morally good if it adheres to the principles derived from categorical imperatives such as universalizability principles. It means that act only according to maxims that can be universally applied. We have the humanity principles of respect for persons, treat humanity in oneself and others, always as an end and never merely as a means. Okay, we have the autonomy principles, which is act accordance with the moral law that one gives to oneself. Okay, kingdom of ends principle, act as if your maxims should serve as universal laws in a community of rational agents. Okay. Here's the example of universalizability principles. One should not make false promises because if anyone did, trust would be impossible. Okay, that's it. It's very clear. Let's move on to humanity principle. One should not exploit workers for personal gain, respecting their dignity and rights. So it's very touchable. So let's move on to autonomy principle. One should make decisions based on their moral reasoning, not external pressures. And let's move on to the kingdom of ends principles. One should vote in a way that they believe would be just if anyone did the same. Okay, so let's move on to dilemma. Okay, a dilemma is a situation where a person faces a choice between two or more conflicting options, none of which are entirely acceptable or free of negative consequences. For example, a doctor must decide whether to allocate a single available organ to one of two patients, both of whom will die without it. Okay, that is a situational example of dilemma. Again, a doctor must decide whether to allocate a single available organ to one of two patients, both to whom will die without it. Okay, so in ethical or moral dilemmas, we have the when you say ethical or moral dilemmas, it's ethical or moral dilemmas involves situations where human actions have significant significant moral um, implications and the individual must choice between conflicting moral principles. So, for example, in ethical and moral dilemmas, we have a whistleblower must decide where to report corporate misconduct, risking their job, or remain silent, allowing the unethical behavior to continue. Okay, so video. I mean the levels of moral dilemma. Okay, so moral dilemmas can occur at various levels, including individual, organizational, and systematic, each involving the different scopes and impact of moral conflict. Okay, so for example, in individual level, as I mentioned earlier, a person must choose between lying to protect a friend or telling the truth and harming a friend. That is individual level in levels of moral dilemmas. Okay, so organizational level, a manager must decide whether to implement cost saving layoffs that will hurt employees but save the company. Okay, so in systematic level, a government must choose between implementing strict environmental regulations that could harm economic growth but protect the environment. So let's move on epistemic moral dilemmas. So when we say epistemic moral dilemmas, involve situations where conflicting moral requirements exist and the moral agent is unsure which requirements test procedures. So in situational example, a soldier must decide whether to follow an order that conflicts with their personal moral beliefs, unsure which duty is more pressing. Okay, so let's move on ontological moral dilemmas. When we say ontological moral dilemmas, involve situations where two or more moral requirements conflict but neither requirements overrides the other, leaving the agent in a true moral impasse. Okay, so for example, a nurse must choose between spending limited time with two critically ill patients but requiring equal and immediate care. So that is the example or situational example of um, ontological moral dilemmas. Now let's move on self-imposed moral dilemmas. When you say self-imposed, it came from your self that arise from the moral agent's own past actions or your wrongdoings, leading to a conflict in moral obligations. Example, a person who previously lied to cover a mistake now faces a situations where telling the truth would reveal their past dishonesty and hurt someone they care. Okay, so now let's move on to world who previously lied to cover a mistake now faces a situations where telling the truth would reveal their past dishonesty and hurt someone they care. Okay, so now let's move on to world imposed moral dilemmas. Okay, world imposed moral dilemmas occur due to external events of circumstances that create a situation of moral conflict that the agents for the agents rather. Okay, for example, a natural disaster force a natural disaster forces rescuer to choose between saving one trapped individual or a group of people in a different locations, both options presenting significant role of weight. But this explanation and situational examples should provide a clear understanding of each concept in a concise manner. And that will be all. Thank you.
So for the continuation of Mr. Rabong, so next is obligation dilemmas. So what is obligation dilemmas? So our situation in which more than one feasible action is obligatory. So obligation dilemma refers to ethical situations where individuals face conflicting obligations or duties. So making it difficult to determine the morally right course of action. These dilemmas often involve situations where fulfilling one obligation may result in neglecting or violating another, so leading to a challenging decision making process that requires careful consideration of values, principles, and consequences. So, example for this is a physician dilemma. So, a doctor is faced with a patient who requires a life-saving drug that is in short supply. However, there are multiple patients also need the drug. So, and the doctor must decide who receives it. So, the dilemma lies in balancing the obligation to save lives and provide equal care while dealing with limited resources. So, ang isa daw is need of um, life-saving drug while there are also many patients nga nag-need. So, gibalance sa doctor o gusto yung kanang para ma-save ang mga patients through limited resources. So next is prohibition dilemmas. So this involves cases in which all feasible actions are forbidden. So prohibition dilemmas refers to ethical situations where individuals face conflicting prohibition or moral imperatives, making it challenging to determine the moral right course of action. So these dilemmas often involve situations where adherence to one moral principle or prohibition may result in violating another, creating a moral quandary that requires careful considerations of values, principles, and consequences. So example of this is the stealing dilemma. So an individual is in a desperate situation where stealing may be the only way to provide for their basic needs or the needs of their family. So to grapple with the moral prohibition against stealing and moral imperative to ensure survival and well-being. So para sa iya nga ang stealing na daw ang only way para ma-provide niya ang mga basic needs nga need kaayos iyang family ron para and the moral imperative to ensure the survival and the well-being. So next is the single agent dilemma. So moral agent is compelled to act on two or more equally the same moral options but she cannot choose both. So dili daw siya maka-choose og both. So single agent dilemma refers to ethical situations where an individual faces conflicting values or principles within themselves. So creating a moral dilemma that requires personal resolutions and decision making. So example of this is the career dilemma. So an individual is torn between pursuing a career path that aligns with their passion and personal interests but offers less financial stability. So or choosing a more financially secure career that may not provide the same level of personal fulfillment. So iyang ikon kung ano siya sa pursuing a career that aligns in passion and personal interest but offers less financial stability. So next is the multi-person dilemma. So what is multi-person dilemma? So it involves several persons like a family, an organizations, or a community who is expected to come up with a consensual decisions on a moral issue at hand. So a multi-person dilemma refers to an ethical situations where multiple individuals or parties are involved and their conflicting values, interests, or needs create a complex moral problem that requires careful considerations and negotiation to reach a resolution. So example of this is the resource allocation dilemma. So in healthcare setting, there is a limited supply of life-saving medications, and professionals must make decision about how to allocate the medication among multiple patients who need it. So considering factors such as severity of illness, chance of recovery, and ethical consideration. So another example is um, the business decision dilemma. So a company is faced with a decision of whether to lay off a portion of its workforce to cut costs and maintain profitability or retain all employees to prioritize job security, recognizing the impact it will have on the livelihoods of the families of those affected. So next is the next next moral dilemmas arise due to inconsistency in our principle. So moral dilemmas occur when there is a clash or inconsistency between our ethical principles, so causing it uncertainty in determining the moral right course of action. So these dilemmas highlight the complexity of navigating conflicting values and the need for thoughtful reflections and decision making to resolve them. So next is morality. So morality is concerned about the rightness or wrongness of human action. So morality refers to a set of principles or standards that guides individuals in determining what is right and what is wrong, good or bad in their actions and decisions. So for example, a person may face a moral dilemma where when deciding whether to be honest about a mistake they made, knowing that it may have a negative consequences but aligns with their moral value of truthfulness. Another example is the moral obligation. So, to help others in need, where a person may choose to donate their time or resources to a charitable cause, reflecting their moral belief in compassion and altruism. So, next is Lawrence Kohlberg is the proponent of moral development theory. So the proponent of moral development theory is Lawrence Kohlberg. So next, reasoning of individuals undergoing the pre-conventional level of Kohlberg, moral development theory is centered on the pain and pleasure of the consequences of the actions performed. So according to Kohlberg, moral development theory, individuals at the pre-conversational level of moral reasoning base their decisions on the consequences of their actions, specifically the avoidance of pain and pursuit of pleasure. So their moral judgments are primarily driven by self-interest as they focus on what benefits them or avoids negative consequences. So next is during the conventional level of Kohlberg's moral development theory, an individual learns to follow the rules and conform to the expectations of the society in which he or she belongs to. He or she belongs to. So for the explanation of this, in the unconventional level of Kohlberg moral development theory, individuals prioritize following societal norms, rules, and expectations. They seek to conform and uphold the established social order, valuing things such as maintaining social harmony, obeying laws, and fulfilling their roles and responsibilities within their community or society. So their moral judgments are based on the perceived approval or disapproval of others and the desire to be seen as a good and moral person according to the societal standards. So, next is the post-conventional level. Post-conventional level is the highest level of Kohlberg's moral development theory wherein an individual realizes that the ethical principles are not only based on the rules or conventions that the society dictates but based on using one's free will and how we understand a situation using his full rationality. So, in the post-conventional level of Kohlberg moral development theory, individuals develop their own set of ethical principles that may sometimes go beyond societal norms and laws. So they prioritize abstract concepts such as justice, equality, and human rights. So an example of this level is when someone chooses to engage civil disobedience to protest an unjust law based on their personal convictions that is morally wrong and conflicts with their higher principles of fairness and justice. So another example is when an individual actively advocates for environmental sustainability and takes actions to reduce their carbon footprint. They're driven by their belief in the importance of the preserving the planet for future generations, even it means going against societal norms for convenience. So next is the consequentialism. Again, consequentialism is the ethical theory in which claims that the consequences of an action are the ones that ultimately matter. So consequentialism is an ethical theory that judges the morality of an action based on its consequences or outcomes. So it holds the rightness or wrongness of an action is determined by the overall amount of happiness. So well-being or utility it produces with the goal of maximizing the overall goods. Example of this is where a doctor has to decide between two treatment options for their patients. Option A has a higher chances but comes with significant side effects, while option B has a lower success but fewer side effects. So in applying consequentialism, the doctor would consider the potential consequences of each option on the overall well-being and quality of life for the patient. So they would weigh the potential benefits and drawbacks to make a decision that maximizes the overall positive outcome for the patients, prioritizing their well-being and the long-term health. So next, a philosophy advocating the greatest happiness of the greatest number is called utilitarianism. So what is utilitarianism? So is an ethical theory that emphasizes the greatest overall happiness or well-being for the greatest number of people. So it asserts that the morality of an action is determined by its utility or usefulness in maximizing overall happiness and minimizing overall suffering. So example of this is the vaccination program. So vaccination program, utilitarianism would support widespread vaccination programs aim at preventing the spread of diseases. So by vaccinating a large population, The overall happiness and well-being of society are maximized by reducing the occurrence of illness and its associated suffering. So because of vaccination programs, their overall or big overall happiness of well-being of society are maximized by reducing the occurrence of illness and its associated suffering. So next is utilitarianism embodies the principle of utility, which states that we should always act so as to produce the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. So the statement, we should always act so as to produce the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people, reflects the core principles of utilitarianism. So it suggests that when making ethical choices, one should consider the overall happiness or well-being of the largest number of individuals involved. So the goal is to maximize the net happiness of utility in a given situation, prioritizing the collective welfare over individual interest. So next is Jeremy Bentham. So Jeremy Bentham is a British philosopher, is regarded as the founder of the utilitarianism, particularly quantitative hedonistic utilitarianism. So the British philosopher is Jeremy Bentham. Bentham is Bentham. So next, considered as the spiritual father of University of College in London is Jeremy Bentham because of his support of extending education to people of all classes and religion. So Jeremy Bentham is considered um, as the spiritual father of University of College London due to his advocacy for expanding education to individuals from all social classes and religious backgrounds. Bentham believed in the importance of accessible education as a mean to promote equality and improve society as a whole. So his support and influence played a significant role in shaping the inclusive educational philosophy of University of College London. So next, Bentham provides a framework for evaluating pleasure and pain, commonly called hedonic calculus or calculus of felicity. So Bentham's hedonistic calculus, also known as the calculus of felicity, is a framework he developed for evaluating pleasure and pain. So it involves quantifying and comparing the intensity, duration, certain and the extent of pleasure or pain that different actions or decision produce may produce. So by applying this calculus, individuals can assess and make choices that maximize overall happiness and minimize suffering in a systematic and rational manner. So that's all, everyone. Let's continue for the next reporter.
Hedonism. Hedonism is the belief that morality is determined by the acquisition of pleasure. Hedonism is a philosophy that suggests the primary goal of life is to seek pleasure and avoid pain. It argues that pleasure is the highest good and the most important pursuit. Hindus, Hedonists believe that actions are right if they increase overall happiness and wrong if they cause suffering. This pleasure can be physical, like enjoying good food, or mental, like experiencing joy or satisfaction. John Stuart Mill refined the original utilitarianism of Bentham, and he is known for his short exposition of the theory of individual liberty and the right of freedom of speech. John Stuart Mill refined Bentham's utilitarianism by emphasizing the quality of pleasures over mere quantity. He argued that intellectual and moral pleasures are superior to physical ones. Mill is also known for his strong advocacy of individual liberty and freedom of speech. He believed that individuals should be free to express themselves and make their own choices as long as they do not harm others. This freedom, he argued, is essential for personal and social progress. Justice is concerned with the equitable distribution of benefits and burdens to individuals in social institutions. Justice is about ensuring that benefits and burdens are fairly shared among people in the society. It means everyone gets what they deserve, whether it's reward for good work or supporting in times of need. In social institutions, justice aims to balance resources, opportunities, and responsibilities so that no one is unfairly disadvantaged or disadvantaged. This fairness helps maintain harmony and trust within the community. Distributive justice refers to the fair distribution or allocation of certain things which are generally satisfied as burdens when they are regarded as undesirable or as benefits when they are desirable. Distributive justice is about ensuring that good things like wealth and opportunities and bad things like taxes and hard work are shared fairly among people. For example, in a company, distributive justice would mean fair salaries for all employees based on their work and contributions. It also means sharing responsibilities like extra work during busy times so that no one person is unfairly burdened. This fair distribution helps keep everyone satisfied and motivated. Egalitarianism is a theory under distributive justice which claims that distribution is fair if every member of a group receives an equal share of distribution. So, egalitarianism is a theory in distributive justice that says fairness means everyone gets an equal share. For example, if a class of students wins a prize of $100. Egalitarianism would suggest each student gets an equal amount like $10 each if there are 10 students. It focuses on inequality, ensuring no one gets more or less than anyone else. This approach aims to promote fairness by treating everyone the same. Every citizen should enjoy the same basic legal rights, such as rights to suffrage, education, and due process, guaranteed by the state according to political egalitarianism. Political egalitarianism is the idea that everyone should have the same basic legal rights. For example, every citizen should have the right to vote, access to education, and fair treatment in court. This means that no one is excluded from these rights based on their background or status. It ensures that all individuals have an equal say and protection under the law, promoting fairness and equality in the society. Egalitarianism claims that all citizens should enjoy the same basic socio-economic goods or resources guaranteed by the state. Economic egalitarianism is the idea that everyone should have the same basic economic resources and opportunities. For example, every citizen should have access to essential things like healthcare, housing, and a decent income, regardless of their wealth or status. The state ensures these resources are distributed fairly to reduce inequality. This approach aims to give everyone a fair chance at a good quality of life. Capitalist justice is contribution based justice. Benefits should be distributed according to the degree of contribution that each person provides. His share in the contribution according to or in proportion to his needs. In socialist justice, fairness is based on fulfilling each person's needs. For instance, in a healthcare system, those who are sick, sick rather, or injured receive medical treatment regardless on their ability to pay. Similarly, in education, students may receive scholarships or financial aid based on their financial circumstances rather than their achievements. This approach prioritizes helping those who required support the most, ensuring everyone has access to essential goods and services regardless of their wealth and status. John Rawls is an American philosopher who is known for his theory of justice as fairness. John Rawls, an American philosopher, proposed the theory of justice as fairness, which suggests that the justice should be based on fairness and equality. For example, imagine a group of people deciding how to divide a pie. Rawls would argue that fairness means everyone should get an equal share unless there's a good reason for someone to get more. He emphasizes the importance of ensuring that everyone has a fair chance, especially those who are disadvantaged. Rawls' theory aims to create a just society where everyone's rights and opportunities are respected. Freedom of movement. Free choice of occupation is one of the five basic goods that every person needs as citizen of the state according to John Rawls. According to John Rawls, freedom of movement and the ability to choose one's occupations are fundamental rights that every person needs as citizen of a state. For example, individuals should have the liberty to within their country or even migrate abroad if they wish, without facing unjust restrictions. Similarly, people should be free to pursue the profession or job they desire, without unfair barriers or discrimination. Rawls argues that these freedoms are essential for individuals to lead fulfilling lives and contribute to society according to their talents and interests. According to John Rawls, basic rights and liberties are basic goods that every person needs as a citizen of the state. According to John Rawls, basic rights and liberties are essential goods that every individual requires as a member of society. For instance, these rights might include freedom of speech, religion, and assembly, as well as the right to vote and participate in political processes. Rawls argues that these fundamental freedoms are necessary for individuals to pursue their goals and live meaningful lives without undue interference from the government or other individuals. They form the foundation of a just and fair society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. John Rawls defines justice as a virtue of social institutions, measured by fairness in allocating benefits and burdens, defined by two basic principles, liberty and difference. John Rawls defines justice as a quality of social systems, judged by fairness in how benefits and burdens are distributed. He outlines two basic principles to achieve this liberty and difference. For instance, liberty means everyone has equal rights to freedoms like speech and assembly, while difference ensures that inequalities benefit the least advantaged member of society, such as through fair access to education or healthcare. Rawls believes that a just society upholds these principles to ensure fairness and opportunity for all its members. Entitlement theory claims that distributions are fair when no moral rights are violated in acquiring and transferring ownership of the goods to be distributed. Entitlement theory argues that fairness in distributions is achieved when acquiring and transferring ownership of goods doesn't violate moral rights. For example, if someone buys a bicycle from a store with their own money, they're entitled to own it because they've acquired it through a fair transaction. Similarly, if they later decide to sell the bicycle to another person with their consent, this transfer of ownership is fair because it doesn't infringe on anyone's rights. Entitlement theory focuses on ensuring that people can rightfully claim ownership of goods through legitimate means without unjustly depriving others of their rights.
Robert Nozick is an American philosopher who is known for his libertarian justice, or also known as entitlement theory. So, Robert Nozick is entitlement theory of justice involves three ideas: justice in accusation, justice in transfer, and rectification in injustice. Most political philosophers rejected Nozick's entitlement perspective for its Zaki foundation and lack of practical relevance. Next, justice in distribution is achieved when a person is entitled to it according to the principle of justice in accusation, the principle of justice in transfer, or the principle of rectification. A principle of justice in accusation This principle deals with the initial acquisition of holdings. It's an acquisition of how people first come to own unowned and natural world property. What types of things can be held and for court? And next is restorative justice. It's a theory of justice that emphasizes repairing the harm caused by criminal behavior. Restorative justice refers to an approach to justice that seeks to repair harm by providing an opportunity for those harmed and those who takes responsibility for the harm to communicate about and address their needs in the aftermath of a crime. So next is restorative justice. Oh, sorry. Crime causes, norm, and justice should focus on repairing that harm. The goal of restorative justice is to bring together those most affected by the criminal act, the offender or the victim, and community members in a no universal process to encourage offender accountability and meet the needs of the victims to repair the harm resulting from the crime. So next is the restorative justice. So the responsibility of the government is to maintain order and the community to build peace. So no, restorative justice is to build peace. So the goal of the criminal law are the establishment of order in society and deterrence of crime. So the restorative justice is to bring together those most affected by the criminal act, the offender and the victim and the community members. Next is the retributive justice is the most morally impermissible international to punish the innocent or the inflict disfortunately large punishment in wrongdoers in one of the principle of retributive justice. So the goals of the criminal law of the establishment of order in society and the deterrence of crime. Criminal law is also designed to rehabilitate those who commit a crime and give retribution for victims of crime through the incapacitation of criminals and restoration of laws when possible. Procedural justice is concerned with making and implementing decisions according to fair processes. So, restorative justice refers to an approach to justice that seeks to repair harm by providing an opportunity for those harmed and those who takes responsibility for the harm to commit about and address their needs in aftermath of a crime. Next is rules or procedures must be consistently followed and importantly applied in procedural justice. So what is an example of retribution justice? So retributive justice is an equal punishment for equal crime. An example of this is the common punishment for murder being capital punishment, sentence by death. Justice and fairness are sought by most people, but the interpretational of what is just and what is fair varies. So, procedural justice speaks to the idea of fair process and how people perceptions of fairness is strongly impacted by the quality of their experiences and not only the end result of these experiences. Punishment is warranted as a response to a past event of injustice or wrongdoing. So, ano siya ang punishment, no? So, punishment. For example, is a member of a public revives a spending ticket. Negative outcome but was treated fairly during the interaction with the officer suing the ticket. Positive process, the driver is more likely to feel the encounter was fair and less likely to contest the ticket. Next is rule or procedure. Must be consistently followed and importantly applied in procedural justice. So, while justice usually has been used with reference to a standard of rightness, fairness often was being used with regards to an ability to judge without reference to one's feeling or interest. So fairness has also been used to refer the ability to make judgment that are not overly general but that are concrete. Next is culture or includes all features of society way of life. So culture, no, kay bawman tani, no. Ang culture a, is a lifeblood of vibrant society. Experience in a many ways will tell our stories. Expressed in many ways will tell our story. Celebrate, remember that past, entertain ourselves, and imagine the future. Our creative expressions help define who we are and help us see the world through the eyes of others. So, muna siya ang culture. Subjective culture or non-material culture is viewed as something invisible that reside in people's minds. So, a material culture or what is non-material culture? So, material culture is a totally of physical object and belongings of members of group of people, non-material culture includes ideas, beliefs, social rules, ethics, and attitudes of a society. So, dila na belong si non-material culture. So, si material culture is an example of material culture includes money, tools, weapons, utensils, machines, clothing, or ornaments, art, buildings, and monuments. In other words, objectives that one might see in a market or a museum, a home, or a business, as well as a structure or building itself are part of material culture. So, muna siya ang material culture. Sunod is objective culture. So can be conceptualized as created by individuals, and it is also known as material culture. So ang objective culture no is same as sa material culture nga makita nato kay tungod kay kini si objective material culture is conceptualized as created by individual. So ginama ra siya ang objective culture. So si objective culture is pwede siya mabilong sa material culture kay tungod kini si objective culture is atuang siyang makita. So lastly is an act can be judged as right or wrong based slowly on the nature of the act itself. So, kung balik ko, no? An act can be judged as right as wrong based slowly on the nature of the act itself. So, ang definition or atong lamon nga istoryaan na is the objective of an act of the value towards with an action it's set by its every nature. For example, the object of the prayer of the glory of God. Thus, a prayer by its nature seeks to give glory to God, whereas it the aims of the lie to mislead the listener. So that's all, and thank you.
A moral person, embodied spirit, this stresses the unity between our body and soul. So, a moral person, embodied spirit means someone who acts in a good and ethical way while staying true to their beliefs, showing how their actions and thoughts are connected. Next is a moral person is an entity having moral status or understanding. A moral person is someone who knows what is right and wrong and tries to do the right things. This entity is recognized for their moral values and ability to understand ethical principles. Moral persons are moral agents when they act as sources of morally evaluable actions, in that they are the doers of such actions. So, moral persons are moral agents when they are responsible for their actions and can be judged based on their moral choices. They are the one who actively engage in actions that can be morally assessed and evaluated. An example of a moral person is acting as a moral agent is a teacher who chooses to report instances of bullying in their school. So, by taking action against bullying, the teacher demonstrates moral agency by actively engaging in morally evaluable actions that promote a safe and respectful environment for students. When a person's rights are respected, they act as moral patients. All moral persons are moral patients, but not all can be moral agents. For example, if ang usa ka bata nga gipasalamatan sa iyang maayong buhat sa pagtabang sa iyang mga kauban sa eskwelahan, bisag gipasalamatan siya sa iyang moral nga buhat, dili pa siya angay i-consider nga usa ka moral agent. Nganuman, tungod kay wala pa siya sa hustong edad o kahibalo to make decisions in line with moral principles. Next is moral agents. So, sa din ang moral agents? Moral agents are beings that are capable of reasoning, judging, and acting with reference to right and wrong. Moral agents are beings that are expected to adhere to standards of morality for their actions. So, ang moral agents, these are individuals who are required to follow moral standards in their behavior, reflecting principles of right and wrong. They are expected to act in accordance with ethical norms and values, demonstrating a sense of responsibility and accountability for their actions. An example for this is a teacher nga nagtuman sa mga ethical principles like sa pagrespeto sa mga estudyante, pagtudlo sa tinuod or accurate nga mga information, and prioritizing their well-being in education. Ang maestra o maestro gikinahanglan nga mutuman sa usa ka moral nga pamaagi, ensuring that their actions align with the ethical rules of their profession and giving priority to the well-being and rights of their students. Moral agents are morally responsible for their actions and accountable for their consequences. So, moral agents, these are individuals who have the capacity to make moral judgments and decisions. They are considered morally responsible to their actions because they have the ability to discern right from wrong and are accountable for the outcomes of their choices based on the ethical principles. An example of moral agency and responsibility mao ang usa ka tawo nga mas gipili niya ang pagtabang sa usa ka tawo bisan dili niya kaila despite facing personal risk. So, in this scenario, ang tao is considered nga moral agent tungod sa iyang desisyon nga gipili base sa iyang maayong buhat ug kabalo siya kung unsa ang maayo ug dili. Environmental ethics is a system of values that people express in relation to each other and to nature. So, ang environmental ethics, it is a framework of principles and beliefs that guide human behavior towards nature and the environment. It involves understanding and expressing moral values concerning the interconnectedness between humans and the nature. So, an example of environmental ethics in action is a community implementing recycling programs and conservation efforts to protect natural resources and reduce waste management. And another example is a school incorporating environmental education in into their curriculum to educate students about ecological issues, sustainability, and the importance of conservation for a healthier planet. Anthropocentrism refers to the view that only humans have moral status or intrinsically valuable. So, ang anthropocentrism means believing that only humans are important and have moral values. It's the idea that humans are the most significant beings and their needs and interests are more crucial than those of other living things. St. Thomas Aquinas' view of the natural environment as created at the service of human beings. So, St. Thomas Aquinas' perspective on the natural environment is that it was created by God to serve and benefit human beings. So, according to Aquinas, nature exists for the purpose of fulfilling human need and providing resources for human well-being and sustenance. Sentientism grounds moral status not on an individual's rationality, but on the individual capacity to experience feelings and sensation. So, sentientism prioritizes moral status based on an individual's capacity to feel sensations and emotions rather than on rationality alone. So, it values the ability to experience pleasure, pain, and emotions, viewing sentience as the fundamental criterion for ethical treatment and consideration of beings. Biocentrism means life-centered ethics and views all life as possessing intrinsic value, whether it is human, an animal, or a plant. So, biocentrism, from the word bio, it means life. So, meaning biocentrism is tanang living beings sama sa mga tao, hayop ug mga tanom have inherent value or worth. So, it focuses on acknowledging the intrinsic value of all living beings, promoting respect and consideration for the inherent worth of every life form in the world. Ecocentrism, view that recognizes intrinsic value in all life forms and ecosystems themselves. So, ecocentrism goes beyond valuing individual organism to recognize the holistic value of the entire ecosystem, promoting the protection and preservation of nature for its own sake, not just for human benefit. Ramon C. Reyes. So, Ramon C. Reyes is a Filipino philosopher, identifies four cross points to one's identity, which are physical, the interpersonal, the social, and the historical. Values are anything that can be desired and something chosen from alternatives, acted upon, and enhances creative integration and development of human personality. So, values, these are things that people want and choose from different options which they act upon and help in the creative growth and development of a person's personality. An example of a value that enhances the creative integration and development of human's personality could be honesty. So, choosing to be honest in interactions and actions, even when it may be challenging, can contribute to personal growth, integrity, and positive relationships with others. Cultural value includes poetry, music, painting, and unique characteristics important to a culture. So, a cultural values, encompass things like poetry, music, painting, and unique traits that are significant to a particular culture. So, these elements reflect to the beliefs, traditions, and artistic expressions that hold importance and contribute to the identity and heritage of a culture.